Hi, welcome to How to Repair. In this video we're going to be looking at how to replace a belt on a tumble dryer, and I will also be showing you how to change the bearings and also the pads at the front of the machine. As I will be stripping the machine completely down, this video will help for all these components. Firstly, let me troubleshoot the problems that you may be suffering with. If the drum on the tumble dryer is not turning, but you can hear the motor running, this is a good sign that the belt may have gone on the tumble dryer. If the tumble dryer is making a humming noise when you turn it on, but the drum is not turning, then you may have a problem with either the motor or the capacitor on the machine. Now, when it comes to the bearings, you need to understand you might be hearing a slightly different noise to when it was new. Now, if you catch this early, you can prevent any damage. So it's worth every year or year and a half just inspecting the back bearing on this. There are also two pads and sometimes a couple of jockey wheels at the front of the machine, which I will also show you how to change. We are filming on a new machine that I just did a review on, and I also did a previous video to this to show you all about the machine with regards to the heating system, problems that can occur with the heating system and where all the thermostats are. This video is good for all Hotpoint and Indesit and Ariston vented and condenser tumble dryers. The process is very similar on both type of machines. There may be slight differences on the way that the machine comes apart. Okay, first thing we need to do is remove the plinth, the side panel and the heater from the machine to gain access to be able to replace the belt. Before doing any work on the appliance, always disconnect it from the electricity supply. The plinth is simple to come off. There are 3 clip points at the front, and this will give you access. Some screws you need to undo underneath the machine here. Now we're going to lift the machine off the workbench so we can access the top. To remove the lid, there are 2 screws. Make sure you keep all the screws in order, as there are different sizes throughout the video, and you need to make sure that these go back in the correct hole. To take the lid off, tap it towards yourself from the back to release the plastic at the front. Then the lid will come away. There are 4 screws on the retention bar at the top. This may vary on the condenser dryers. The screws on the outside are larger than the screws on the inside. This bar then slides backwards, but when reassembling, make note that there are lugs that the bar fits in, and these slide backwards and come out. There are 2 screws that need to be undone. Please take note that the side panel goes in exactly the same as the bar at the top. There are 3 location lugs here. There is also a 13mm bolt which is underneath here, which holds the capacitor in place, which you'll need to see when it comes to the point of changing the capacitor. There's a bracket at the bottom, which is part of the new reinforcing system that Hotpoint and Indesit have produced to make the cabinet more sturdy. Keep this separate. Then you have 3 screws going up the panel. There is one last screw that you need to be aware of just inside the dryer. This screw is a separate size to the rest of them on the machine, so do keep this one safe. It's slightly shorter but slightly fatter than the rest. When it comes to removing the side panel after undoing the screws, slide the panel backwards towards you and it will come away. Please take note there are 2 location lugs or 3 location lugs at the front. Slide the panel back and the panel will come away. Now at this point, if your fault was you were hearing a humming noise, then it's a possibility it might be the capacitor. If the drum is turning freely with no restriction, then you're still hearing a humming noise. You just lift up this flap and the capacitor is here. Now remember, although the appliance is totally disconnected from electricity, the capacitor is a shunt type device which gives the motor a push to make it go. Now it is very important, there's two connections on top of the capacitor. With insulated pliers or an insulated screwdriver, make sure you go across the two terminals to ground the capacitor. I'm actually going to remove this cover now, which has only got some plastic clips, one at the top, one at the front and one at the back. And if we remove these, then this will give you access to the motor much easier. And we're going to need to take these off anyway, because I'm going to show you how to replace the belt and also how to replace the bearings and forwards pads. After you've done the clips, slide the cover away. This cover is now a new modification to this machine. It stops humidity getting into the motor and onto the capacitor, and it also prevents dust being drawn into the motor, which would make it inefficient with cooling. So it's very important at this point. You would always want to make sure you vacuum the whole of the tumble dryer out, and it might be worth going a little bit further and cleaning all the ducting, the vent tube, and of course your waste tube. And if it's a condenser dryer, you will need to also do the evaporation plate or condenser plate. As I said, it's a 13mm bolt underneath, and I'm using a socket. And once that's undone, you can take the nut off, pull the capacitor out, and then swap over the wires. Now this has got 4 wires going to it. Capacitors normally have a line down the middle, and this basically indicates that this is the feed in and this is the feed out, or positive, negative, whichever way you want to word it. Then just lift up the wires. Sorry, wrong one. And these are piggyback connectors. Replace the capacitor and then fit the capacitor back to the machine, and I'll do that now. Now at this point, if you wanted to replace the motor, you will have to undo some of the cable ties. I'm not going to do it on this, but I'll just show you what you need to do. Undo a couple of the cable ties. We're going to have to remove the belt off the machine, and I'll show you how to replace this belt in a minute. And you're also going to have to undo a couple of bolts at the back holding a fan blade on. But firstly, let me just fit this back on. And even though the appliance is discharged, I am still using my insulated pliers. Next, we're going to remove the heater, because you need access to the rear bearing to be able to replace a belt on a tumble dryer or to replace the motor. So you'll notice there's a clip here and also a clip at the top. Now the clip at the top I can remove just by pressing this down and pushing it through. But this one here, we have to wait till the plate comes off the back. There are a selection of screws all the way around the heater, and when it comes to removing the last screw, you need to make sure you support the heater because of that clip that we haven't been able to gain access to. I'm now using a hand screwdriver to do the last screws around the insulation, because I do not wish to damage it. This is a new modification by Whirlpool or the Hotpoint Indesit group to keep the heat within the tumble dryer and not waste energy. It does make the dryers much more efficient. When undoing the last screw, let the heating element drop down I've got one more screw to do at the bottom here. Support the heater and let it come away, but don't let it drop down because it's still attached to the wiring harness. And I'm just undoing the plug because I should have done that earlier, which is just a straightforward connector. And then this clip down the bottom you need to release. Once that's undone, you're able to pull the connection plug out and put the heater safely to one side. At this point, you might want to replace the motor, and you'd have to remove the belt from the actual motor and undo 3 bolts I'll show you in a second on the fan blade at the back. But if the belt was snapped, the belt would normally be lying on the floor in here. Now let me explain a couple of things. Firstly, if you could hear the motor running and the drum was not turning, then the belt may be snapped. You would be able to tell this when you took the lid off because the belt wouldn't be on the drum and it would be lying inside the machine. Now the belt has got grooves on it, and this belt here is a 1860, I believe. Yes, this is an 1860 and it's 9 PHE. Now this means that the grooves on the belt are 9 grooves and the belt is 1 meter 860 long. Now the reason belts snap are predominantly due to people overloading the machine. They can also go because they may be 5-6 years old, and that is the lifespan of a stretch belt. But predominantly I have noticed that most belts go because they are slipping. And let me try and explain this correctly for you. If you put a heavy load in the drum, this is a very small shaft, and what would happen is the motor would turn without the drum turning because the actual weight in the drum exceeds what the pressure is on the actual motor shaft, and therefore it would spin on the grooves, and after a period of time it would cut through the belt and the belt would snap. So that all being said, if you have to replace the belt, please follow the video further and we'll go into how to actually replace the belt. But if you're replacing the motor, you want to take the belt off the machine. And the easiest way to do this is rotate it downwards while pushing the belt that direction, as you can see here. And as I do that, it comes across the drum shaft. Now this is a stretch belt. A lot of people, when they get new belts, say it will not fit. And I'm going to show you an easy way to put this belt onto the shaft at the end of the video when we reassemble. But for the moment, I want to show you how to actually replace the motor. I have actually just removed the capacitor so we can see. But if you look closely here, there is a torque screw on this side and a torque screw on the other side. They are quite difficult to get off, but they're not really much of a problem. Once these are undone, and we've undone the 3 bolts on the fan blade at the back, the motor will slide slightly forward because there is a catch just at the back here, and that's easy for you to replace. And there are 3 10mm or 8mm nuts which you undo and the fan blade will come off. The fan blade is in 2 halves, but it's pretty easy to understand how it goes together. Next we'll look at the bearing system. The bearing system is straightforward. This is the bearing I'm telling you to inspect once a year. So if you grab hold of one of the pins and just try and straighten it so it's nice and straight, then this will push through and the pin will come out. Put that safe. Then the back half of the bearing will come away and you can now see the shaft. Now I have done a previous video on the shaft which I will include in the description below. But if you maintain this bearing, you will never have a problem. This bearing should be inspected every 18 months. And always make sure that the bearing has not got any wear in it. In other words, the shaft can't move up and down too much. You will actually see, although the bearing itself is a pear shape, the groove that it will cut into the bearing when it wears is also going to become a pear shape. Now this is a torque 15, I believe. Yeah, oh, it's torque 20, it could be 15 or 20. I've used it so often it's worn off. Undo the screw. And you might need to use your pin nose pliers. Bring that away, and there is the bearing. And if I bring this closely to the camera, you can see, as this is a new bearing, that is in good condition. If it was in worn condition, you would have, instead of having a circular hole, you would start to gain a pear-shaped hole. At this point, we're able to remove the belt or refit the belt, whichever you prefer. If you are actually taking the drum out of the machine, you need to follow this process. If you are just replacing the belt, you will need just to do the next couple of minutes before putting the belt on. So the first three things we need to undo are the screws on this side of the panel. These are so simple to work on. Now, once those three screws are undone, you really want to take off the vent tube on vented dryers. Just undo the screw here. Then use a small screwdriver, and there is a plastic lug here and down the bottom. Just turn these up slightly and rotate clockwise, and you will see that it's moving along a groove. Now we're able to remove this whole tube. There is now a reinforced support at the front for the tube, because in the early days this tube may have been plastic and it was prone to not being able to be lined up correctly. So they have replaced that. Now if you need to remove the belt, just slide the belt backwards all the way around until it comes down. Then we are able to ease off the back panel, carefully not damaging the seal that you can see here. And take the belt. It's caught on a catch at the back. You can take the belt off the machine. You are also, I'll fit the belt in a second for you, you're also at this point able to remove the drum, which will allow you to do a lot of maintenance and also inspect the forward felt pads and the drum support wheels. So I'm just going to lift this drum out, put the hand at the bottom, let the drum come backwards slightly, lifting it up, making sure not to damage the seal, and the drum will come out of the machine. Right, depending on the model that you have on these machines, you may have one or two wheels on the machine. You may have an assortment of different pads. These are support pads that the lip of the drum sits on, and these pads are designed to wear. These wheels can also become bad bearings, and the wheel can also get exceedingly dirty, and fluff can build up on these wheels and cause a slight lump on them. So when the machine is turning, sometimes you might hear an incorrect noise like it dudum, 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 and this could just be because of the dirty jockey wheels. But these are standard jockey wheels, and they normally have a small bearing inside. It might be possible just to replace the bearing, but the jockey wheels are affordable and the pads are affordable. This is why when I did the video on the review of this machine initially, I gave it a 7 out of 10 in my view ratings. And this is not only because the machine is easy to repair for anybody, it is also because the parts are affordable. On some makes of appliances, the components make the machine uneconomic to repair. On this machine, it is economic to repair. Now, if you need to replace the pads, I'm going to be doing this a little bit cock-handed so you can actually see on the video. Just put a small screwdriver behind, pop it out on one side, then it slides away, and if I can see the pin, and up. And at the back of the pads there are two location lugs. These pads, as you can see, are new and in perfect condition. So just drop it down and then push it away from you, twist in, and it's locked into place. There's a pad on this side that's worth doing, and you've also got the jockey wheel here. The jockey wheel or support wheel is straightforward. This is an 8mm socket, and I'm undoing this. Sorry, I'm trying to keep this so you can see while I undo, but it's not necessarily the way that I would normally undo it. Okay, you have the plate, the wheel, and then the nut. Now when reassembling this, I do suggest sometimes you would have to take the plastic panel off. This means that you've got to do a selection of screws at the front of the machine, but you can see this in the tumble dryer heater video, how I explained to take this off. Now this goes on a certain way, so we're going to drop this on. Now as you saw, the shaft went inside, so I've got a very small screwdriver, and I'm going to go in just so it doesn't drop inside, and bring it forward. Now I can insert the wheel, make sure this goes on correctly, and I should be able to get the nut in now. I'm putting a little bit of sideways pressure on. Oh, by the way, you'll notice that there is a little bit of red on the thread, and this is because you would normally fit Loctite. I will put some Loctite on it in a minute because I haven't got it to hand. I just want to show you this in the video. So keeping some sideways pressure on it, you should be able to do this up. And I'm putting a little bit of force now against the wheel so I can actually get it tight. That is because you would normally have to lock it on the other side, but there is a way of doing this as I showed you here, and that wheel now is perfect. On some models of machine there is another wheel fitted on this side. Here is the felt pad that needs to be replaced if you're getting a lot of dust in the machine, and there is also a pad on the back. Now as you can see here, there is a pad on the back, and they've got a self-adhesive surface on them when they come. You will need to clean the panel up once removing the old pad and then stick the new one. Exactly the same as on the front. There is a pad just inside this groove that runs all the way round, and it's like a sponge, and basically it pushes up against the drum to stop any fluff or heat coming into the drum. Now I know everybody likes just to put their laundry into a tumble dryer, shut the door and let it do its program. But if you ever have to do any work on the machine, and I would suggest doing this every 18 months anyway, inside here will build up with fluff over a period of time. When I say fluff, it's dust off your clothes, the fabric, little spores of fabric, and it will build up. Make sure you clean the ducting tube, clean the filter, all down through the ducting assembly, the vent tube that we just took out. Make sure you vacuum all inside the machine so it's spick and span, because it will prevent problems occurring long term. It will make the machine more efficient, therefore saving you energy when drying the clothes. The shorter the period of time that it's drying the clothes, the less kilowatt that you're using, the less money out of your pocket. Okay, just before putting the drum in, just so you can have a good look at this, this is a pot riveted bearing shaft. I have done a previous video on how to replace this. You will need some additional tools like a grinder and drill, but you are able to replace this by drilling these out and then replacing the whole of this unit that you can see here. It's not a difficult job and it's a very cheap component. Okay, so I'm going to drop the drum in, and as I said, carefully put this in and make sure you don't damage the seals. And I'm just going to ease back the back plate. Always a good idea to have an additional set of hands. And now I'm going to take it down a little bit so it lines up, sits on the jockey wheel correctly, and goes through the hole at the back. I'll leave that there, and now I'll show you how to fit the belt. At this point, you wouldn't have taken the whole machine apart unless you wanted to do the maintenance. So if you just wanted to replace the belt, you only need to do the screws at the back and ease the back panel away. Now, to put a new belt on is straightforward. Just take the belt through so it sits on the drum. Ease the drum back, and I hope you can see this. Matter of fact, I'm going to turn the camera slightly. Going down, just ease the belt over the shaft, take it out of the way of the seal, just lip it over the drum, and do the same on the other side. And you're not trying to film, and there we go, that has gone over. And then just line this up with the drum at the back and push it forward so it sits correctly. So the shaft has come through the hole, and I'm just going to put a couple of screws in on the side panel just to hold the side panel in place. Now I'm going to insert the bearing, and I might need to lift the drum up slightly and line up the thread hole. Put the screw in, hand tight, quarter of a turn. Then I'm going to put the bearing on, and I'm also going to push the panel so I can get the pin through the side hole. Going to rotate the drum so I can clearly get the pin through. Push the pin all the way up, and then bend the pin over so it locks into place and can never come undone. Like so. I'm also going to insert the tube through the thing so it lines up correctly on the front, and I'm going to lock this in place. Okay, once you've reinforced the cabinet by doing the screws up and putting the vent tube in, grab hold of the belt, slide it over the motor, and rotate the drum a few times. What you're trying to do is get the belt lined up with the motor, and that's about right there. Now, as you can see, the motor belt is not long enough, and you need to either have a special Hotpoint tool, or I use a piece of steel tube. Straightforward. You could use a piece of copper tube, but I'm not sure it would be strong enough. But a piece of steel tube. Put that underneath the belt. Then you're able to stretch this down so this goes over the motor shaft, as you can see here. Now I'm just going to hold this and rotate this down while I bring the belt in line with the motor shaft. And then I'm going to hold the belt and slide the tube that direction. And then I can take the tube out of the way, and I can now line this up And I've moved the fan blade slightly. That's because the panel's not on, the fan blade was catching there. That will all come perfect when I put the rest of the cabinet together. And you want to be lining this really on the forward point of the shaft, one tooth back. And that now is sitting perfectly. Okay, I'm not going to bore you with the whole assembly. I'm just going to put the heater on because there's a couple of bits I'd like you to make note of. And we'll have a look at the running of the machine in a second once I've reassembled. Thread the motor wire through, put the plate on the back, making sure that this wiring here is neat and you don't catch any of the wires underneath the plate. Then line it all up and put a couple of screws in. Okay, once the panel's inserted, then you will be able to put this clip back through. It's very important that you get this clip and these wires not catching on any of the metal plates. Then we'll put the bottom clip in, and then we can connect up the heater. That is all now assembled. Now it could be a good point here to actually test the machine. Now, I don't recommend doing this unless you are competent with electrics. So I do emphasize that. I've plugged the machine in and I've got this lined up and I've straightened out the panel and we'll just press start. As you can see, the belt is lining up perfectly on the actual motor shaft. You want to make sure that it lines up on the first or second groove maximum. This will make sure that the belt lasts a long period of time and make sure you don't overload the machine. It's called an 8 kilo machine because it's designed to take a maximum of 8 kilos wet. That's not 8 kilos dry and then soak it in water and turn it into 12 kilos. It's 8 kilos wet. Or 9 kilos if you have a 9 kilo model, 7 kilo if you have a 7 kilo model. Now I'll quickly assemble the machine. Now I just thought I'd show you this as I'm reassembling. Put the panel on and you see these holes I was on about at the bottom. You've got to make these line up. And as you can see, all three have gone down apart from that one. And I'm just using the screwdriver to ease it out. Line up all the lugs so they sit into location. Then slide the panel forward. So the first screw I'm putting in is the one in the bottom, and I'm not going to do it up tight. Then I will put the one at the front in and do this one up tight. Now do this one up tight, because if you tightened this one first, you wouldn't be able to pull the panel forward slightly. That is now done up tight, and the 3 or 2 location lugs are correct here. And I'll just bring the machine down for you and slide that back. And as you can see, the catch at the top is slightly out. That's it. And the panel fits in perfectly. Now you can do the 3 screws up at the back. Now that we've put the machine back together, we'll just turn the machine on, and I'll turn it to 20 minutes just to do a test run with it. Press the start button, and as you can hear, the machine is running at its original noise factor. This means that all the components in the machine have been inspected. Although this was a new machine, this should have taught you the correct way of servicing this machine. Now, I'd like to thank you all for watching this video. I hope we helped you manage to repair your dryer correctly. I hope you supported the website by buying the parts off us. And remember, there are many more tutorials at the website with regards these Whirlpool-made Hotpoint, Indesit and Ariston machines. And if I really helped you, remember, you can always click on the bipolar beer page. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope it helped you. And remember to shop with How to Repair. Thanks for watching.